You spend your whole life working your fingers to the bone, putting food on the table, missing holidays, missing birthdays, just so your child can have a better future, and then on the very day that should be your proudest moment, someone takes it away, with words so cruel they cut deeper than any knife. That's what happened to me at my daughter's graduation. But I'll tell you this, the man who humiliated me thought I was just an old fool. He had no idea that 68 years of patience, grit, and hard-won wisdom were about to bring him to his knees. My name's Frank Miller, I'm 68 years old, and I live in a small town in Ohio. I retired 5 years ago after driving trucks cross-country for more than 4 decades. Most mornings I wake before the sun, pour myself a strong cup of black coffee, and sit on my creaky old porch listening to the birds wake up. The smell of diesel never really leaves you, but neither does the pride of knowing you spent your life working hard. On my walls are photos of my late wife, my daughter Emily, and the countless miles I traveled for them. I wasn't perfect, I missed Christmases, birthdays, school plays, but I did it all to give Emily a shot at a life better than mine, and when she told me she was graduating college, the first in our family to do so, my chest swelled with pride. I thought nothing could ruin that moment, but life has a cruel way of testing a man's dignity. Emily studied harder than anyone I knew. She worked part-time jobs, took late-night buses home, and called me nearly every evening just to make sure I was okay. She told me often about her professors, most of them supportive, except one. His name was Professor Harris, a man in his 40s, well-dressed, the kind who carried himself like the world owed him respect. From the first time we met, he looked me up and down like I was dirt under his shoes. When I shook his hand at one of Emily's award ceremonies, he smirked. "You must be Emily's father," he said. "Yes, sir, Frank Miller, truck driver, retired now." He chuckled. "Well, I suppose someone had to keep America running while the rest of us read the books." I brushed it off. I'd heard comments like that before, but there was something sharper in his tone, something that told me he didn't just see me as uneducated, he saw me as lesser. Emily's face reddened with embarrassment, but I patted her hand and said, "It's all right, kiddo, he doesn't know what he's talking about." What I didn't know then was that this man's arrogance would cut far deeper, and when it did, it wouldn't just be me he embarrassed, it would be my daughter too. Graduation day came. The auditorium was packed with proud families, the smell of flowers, perfume, and fresh-pressed suits filling the air. I wore my best jacket, though the elbows were worn thin. Emily spotted me in the crowd and waved. My heart nearly burst with pride. Then came the speeches. Professor Harris took the podium, his voice booming. At first, he spoke about the achievements of the students, but then, out of nowhere, his eyes locked on me. "It's a curious thing," he said with a smug grin, "how some of our brightest students come from, let's just say, the most unexpected places. Take Emily Miller here, a brilliant mind, yet her father spent his life behind the wheel of a truck. Isn't it ironic? A man who never touched a book, now watching his daughter rise into a world he could never enter." The crowd chuckled, some laughed. My hands clenched on the armrests. Emily's smile collapsed, her cheeks burned red with shame, and me, I felt something inside me crack. 40 years of sacrifice, mocked in a single sentence. My body shook, but I stayed seated. I didn't shout, I didn't storm out, I just nodded slowly, because I knew a man like him would one day choke on his own arrogance. After that day, I couldn't sleep. I replayed his words over and over. I saw Emily's face, how he'd stolen her joy, but I also knew one thing. Revenge wasn't about fists or shouting, it was about patience, and patience was something a man like me had in spades. I started digging. I had friends in every corner of this country from my trucking days, mechanics, clerks, even a few folks in government offices. Slowly, I pieced together a picture of Professor Harris. Turns out, he wasn't the noble academic he pretended to be. He was siphoning grant money into personal accounts, bullying students into ghostwriting his research, and taking credit for work he never did. Every night, I sat at my kitchen table under the hum of a single light bulb, papers spread out, making notes. "You think an old truck driver can't read?" I muttered. "Well, son, I've been reading people like you my whole life." Weeks later, the cracks began to show. Whispers floated through the campus. An audit had been launched. Harris grew jumpy. He called emergency meetings with staff, sent frantic emails. Emily mentioned how he'd started treating students with sudden, false kindness. "One evening, I got a call, Mr. Miller. Frank, I think we may have gotten off on the wrong foot. I just wanted to say how proud you must be of your daughter." His voice was syrupy, strained. I let him talk. I sipped my coffee, listening, saying little. When I finally spoke, my words were calm. "Professor, storms don't scare a trucker, and neither do men like you." I hung up. His silence on the other end told me he was beginning to understand. His downfall was no longer a possibility, it was a certainty. The reckoning came at a university board meeting, open to parents, faculty, and students. I sat quietly in the back, my cap pulled low. Harris stood at the podium, sweating, trying to defend himself against mounting accusations. He denied, deflected, sneered at anyone who questioned him. Then the chairman said, "We have additional documents presented by a concerned citizen." That was my cue. I rose slowly, walked to the front, and laid down a folder of evidence, receipts, emails, witness statements. Gasps filled the room. Harris's face went pale. He tried to laugh it off, but the chairman read the first page aloud. The room erupted. Emily stared at me wide-eyed, her hand over her mouth. When Harris stammered, "This is outrageous." I met his eyes and said, calm and steady, "Funny thing, Professor, you thought I didn't belong in your world. Turns out, you don't belong in mine, or anyone's." The board voted unanimously to strip him of his position. He left the room to scattered applause, not for him, but for me, for the old man he had once mocked. In the weeks that followed, Harris disappeared from the university. His name was whispered only with disgust. Emily graduated with honors, her pride restored. One evening, as the sun set over our quiet Ohio town, Emily sat beside me on the porch, her diploma clutched in her hands. "Dad," she said softly, "you didn't have to do all that for me." I smiled, "Kiddo, I didn't do it just for you. I did it for every parent who ever worked their hands raw, only to be told they weren't enough. Dignity isn't given, it's fought for." The cicadas hummed, the sky burned orange, and for the first time in months, I felt peace. To anyone out there who's ever been mocked for their work, their age, or their sacrifices, remember this: true worth doesn't come from titles or degrees. It comes from love, grit, and standing tall even when others try to tear you down. If this story spoke to you, share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear them, and remember, sometimes, even late in life, justice comes knocking.